Hi, Nathaniel Gavronsky here, and I want to talk to you about a casual topic today, but a very concerning one. Now, to put in some context here, do you know that at the border between the Netherlands and Germany, one side speaking German because it's in Germany, and one side speaking Dutch because they live in the Netherlands, they virtually speak the same language. However, someone in Berlin and someone in Amsterdam would not be able to understand each someone so clearly. There'd be some common words, but it gets very murky very quickly. Now, those two cities aren't very far apart, but the cultures are pretty different. Even though Dutch is a Germanic language, English is a Germanic language, Swedish, Norse is Norwegian is a Germanic language. They're not the same languages. Most of the words and the concepts of it don't translate directly. In fact, like only 20%, 26% of the English lexicon is Germanic. 29% is Latin, 29% is Greek. So it's only like really left, less than a third of English is Germanic anymore. Our former case system, it comes directly from German, but the rest of the language actually comes from somewhere else. Uh, Now, this is not a big deal because these are different countries. There's thousands of miles in between. But, some places like there's a place in Italy, northern Italy. If you speak that dialect of Italian, Spanish is much easier for you to communicate and understand. But if you're from southern Italy or from the northeast part of Italy, Spanish is just as much of a foreign language as ancient Greek is. So there's a dialect thing here. But these are different cultures, different countries, the thousands of miles in between. Um, so there's lots of history in between them. Some that have similar history, some that are very vastly different. And it's okay. You would expect that to be different languages and for them not to be able to understand each other. Now, a little something else. You always hear about the Tower of Babel, right? And biblically, everyone spoke the same language, understood the same tongue, but God, brought down the Tower of Babel and confused their tongues so that they would have to disperse and go out and lay fruit in the world abroad. So biblically, there's some of this too. So there should be a good frame of reference for everyone. People who have traveled, people who study the Bible, uh, understand that this concept. Okay, so there's generational differences too. Like the term crackerjack used to be a slang term that your grandparents, maybe even your grandparents spoke in the late 1800s. It was a slang term that the youngsters said. And now it's a carnival candy or a candy or a snack you get at baseball games. For the 1920s, like, hey, now you're on the trolley was slang term. Now you understand me. Now you're following along. Um, in England, someone's calling you out. Said, "Hey, I got your card, mate." So there's slang, and there's slang is going to be different from across the country, across languages and language groups and regions. That's fine. But the core of the language is understood by the majority of the people, and I mean by the majority, I mean all age groups understand the core concept and the core verbiage of the spoken language and the written language. Okay, but that's drastically changing, especially here in the United States. So I was walking into a store once and I asked a younger girl, "Are you in line?" She had no idea what I asked her. "Are you in line?" I asked her again. And she was completely, what? Her friend actually said, "Do you not understand what he's saying?" And the other girl responded, "No, I don't." And the way she said it was kind of a slang term, but I kind of got what she was saying. And I said, "So how do you not understand something that's such a simple question?" She said, "Well, we just don't talk that way. You don't understand basic English. You are a native English speaker." She was clearly from the United States. I speak English quite well, and so uh, I was just so confused. And the two girls were saying, "Well, we speak such different English that it's we don't speak what the way you speak." I'm like, "Well, English is English." Someone from Australia says, "Hey, have you seen my sunnies? Sunnies, I've seen my sunglasses." Some differences are like lorry, semi, ute, for big trucks across the Commonwealth and the United States, um, in the English language. But I mean, essentially, you can figure out what they're meaning. The fact that this person could not understand the simple question, "Are you in line?" was a problem. Now, I complain that the reason why people who come to the United States need to learn how to speak English is because if you ever travel outside of your community that everyone only speaks your language, you have a problem or you need help, you're going to have to be able to communicate with someone what you need. There was a woman who was in the Flatiron District of New York City, spoke a very odd dialect of Spanish, and was lost. Clearly not from here, and that's fine. But we had three Spanish speaking people try to communicate with her, and she couldn't understand them because the dialects in Spanish are very different. There's a reason why having a language in common is necessary for a country to be successful, because you have to be able to go from any part of your country to any other part of your country and be able to effectively communicate. Now, within the countries of like Ecuador and Argentina and Chile and Colombia and throughout Mexico, yeah, each one of those Spanish-speaking countries has a different dialect. Within the countries, they have a pretty good ability to speak to each other within their common dialect of Spanish. The dialects and the accents in English between North Country and South Essex, or like the South and the North in the United States, yeah, there's some differences, but you can roughly understand 98% of everything they have to say. With this young girl, there was none of it, and it was a very simple question: Are you in line? It gets even worse, the fact that most of them can't speak at all. When I asked a girl a question, she's helping me help her with a problem she was having. Her dad asked me to help her. She was dealing with some custody issues. She was younger, probably in her late 20s, early 30s. And I was talking to her about how a cop was going to ask her these questions, how a judge was going to ask her these questions, how an attorney was going to ask her these questions, because this is going to be illegal, this situation. And she couldn't do it. All her response was put a smile on her face, and I don't know. Now, she always kept saying, it ain't right, what happened, but couldn't put in any type of vocabulary to express why the situation was not, in fact, right. She couldn't do it. I asked her to explain to me what she had for dinner last night. That was a struggle. I even had to ask her, well, why'd you order this instead of this? And it took her 5 tries to be able to communicate with me why she ordered what she did and not something else, and why she picked that restaurant over something else, if that was her favorite restaurant or not. She struggled. This is a woman who's raising children. This is a woman who is in her late 20s, early 30s, and she struggled to explain to me in English, someone who was born and raised in the United States, what she had for dinner the previous night. I talk to a lot of people. I work with a lot of kids. A lot of these kids aren't able to express their emotions through verbal language. They can text and write, but they aren't able to write in proper sentences. Everything is jumbled up. Everything is shorthand. They are unable to communicate in long form with proper syntax, and they're completely unable to speak about any type of emotional issue verbally. Like zero, none at all. And this isn't just a Midwest thing, a Northeast thing. This is all over the country. This is a significant problem. Because if you can't communicate with each other from one area of the country to another area of a country using the same language, you're going to have a hard time. There's going to be times and places to where you're going to have to speak your mind in public to someone who desperately needs information quickly, and they don't have time for you to write it out to them so they could, read it back out to someone later. They need quick and efficient communication, and that's not happening. I understand all the social media sites are mostly texting and typing, and there's very little actual, face-to-face communication. Kids don't talk like the way, a lot of anyone here is in their late 30s, 40s, 50s. So I used to communicate when you were younger. There's no going out and to a bonfire and hanging out with your friends. It's literally you were in your room or you were sitting on your couch and you were texting in a group chat. It's either a group chat on Snapchat, a group chat on Instagram, Facebook. There's a bunch of these now, but there's no actual verbal communication happening with any of them many times. And so they're losing the ability to express themselves emotionally and to be able to have any concept of how important that is. I believe one of the main reasons why people are having such difficult times in society is because they have lost the ability to communicate their emotions. Now, someone who's autistic, I understand this greatly because of my autism, I don't understand a lot of social cues. I miss a lot of the nonverbal language. I misunderstand things. I take things too literally too much of the time. And people get frustrated with me. And I get very frustrated with them back because I don't understand why they don't understand what I'm saying. I'm saying it very simple. But it's happening across all young kids and younger people. And it's like they're becoming involuntarily autistic in communication patterns, and this is not healthy for anybody. We need to start encouraging people to start verbally communicating effectively and efficiently. We're not going to be able to go if everyone only communicates versus text message with shorthand. We need to be able to make sure our young people can verbally express their emotions, their wants, their needs, and what's bothering them and what's okay and not okay, and how to express that they're not okay and what they need help with. Because by not being able to do this, we're only setting them up to be frustrated, unable to communicate, and prone to violence. Because if you can't communicate, if you feel isolated in the world at all times, you're not going to have any empathy or any connection to the rest of humanity. You're going to see everyone as an other. And when you see everyone else as an other, when you see everyone else as someone who doesn't understand you, who doesn't relate to you, they're not the same as you. Either they are better than you or they are less than you. And that'll either put you in a suicidal rage or homicidal one, in my personal opinion. We're seeing people act out in violence in the workplace and places of social outings. And even though we don't know all of what's going on behind the scenes, we do hear a lot of the people involved had a high level of frustration. Maybe this is the origin of it. Maybe we need to address this issue because maybe that has more to do with the violence than it does with the ownership of guns. Maybe this has more to do with why so many of our children are failing and committing suicide at some of the most unconscionable numbers in our history. Maybe this is the reason, because we haven't expressed to them the importance of communication. I really hope everyone who watches this will take something from it and will work with their kids on being able to communicate, because when a child can't communicate verbally at the age of 14, and when they can't express what they had for dinner last night verbally at the age of 30, we're in a lot of trouble. Anyway, I'm Nathaniel Gavronsky. Please like, subscribe, follow, and share this video, and hopefully the discussion will come about it so we can start improving the lives of our family, our friends, and the people that we love the most. Thank you very much, and have a good night.